We finally got a cool countdown, Brian. How about it?
I love it.
How
I love
about
it.
it? It's Keepin at 94 live. First time we've ever done this. We're joining everybody else that's done it before us. You know, the ladies over at Dishes and Dimes, Alex Kennedy and his Top Shot Weekly. You know, there's been so many great live streams that we've done so far, but never for Keepin at 94 with Spencer Davies and Brian Fritz. Of course, a part of the basketballnews.com podcast network. Brian, we've got places to start here, but just first stream live for us. This is pretty fun and exciting.
It is. I mean, I'm glad that we're finally getting to do it because we've been talking about doing this for a while and we're trying to figure out like when it was going to be the right time. And I know you did this to me on purpose because it's the day after my Lakers had their season end. So you purposely mapped it out like this, thinking 6 games are going to be toast, can't overcome the injuries. So we'll put Brian on camera right then so he can face his team.
Evil minds, Brian, evil minds. Before we get started, I would like to say that, again, we are a part of the basketballnews.com podcast network. We have so much good stuff on that website, guys. Former players, current players, all doing podcasts for us, doing articles, amazing reporting and film breakdowns from Nikias Duncan, Alex Kennedy, myself, our amazing staff of newsliners, and everyone just keeping that thing live and the best place for your possible NBA playoff coverage. So make sure to tune in over there. As for our podcast, we are on all the listening platforms that you can think of, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it. So make sure to go leave us a comment, like, subscribe, rate and review us, and let us know what you think. We're hoping to be able to interact with you throughout this because this is something that we've always wanted to do, is get your opinions on this. So make sure to send some comments in, and we'll try to get it to as many as possible. But let's start with the obituary that everyone's waiting for. Let's start with Mr. Brian Fritz and his Los Angeles Lakers, who went down last night at the hands of Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns in Game 6 to eliminate LeBron James in his first ever first-round playoff series in the career of one king.
First of all, and this is the right thing to do, give credit to the Phoenix Suns. They earned this victory. They had an amazing season. This is a team that almost had the best record in all of the NBA. They were the 2 seed. Some people thought that they'd be much improved. I don't know how many people thought they would be this improved this season. This team earned it. And that's first and foremost. I don't want people thinking like, oh, well, the Lakers just fell apart. I mean, they had their problems, obviously, but regardless, you face who is in front of you. The Lakers faced the Phoenix Suns, and the Suns handed it to them. And, it's the first time that they've made the playoffs since 2010. So there's a lot of people in Phoenix that are really loving it today, and they should. They should be bragging about it, and they should be enjoying it, and we'll see how the run goes.
Truly. And you mentioned that the Suns earned this. And, there is so much buy-in from top to bottom with that team. It's not just Devin Booker coming out and just completely lighting the world on fire. Let's be honest. That was pretty crazy, man, to have come out and what was it? He scored 33 in the first half, was it?
And 33, he had 22 in the first quarter. There was one point where I think he hit 14 of his first 20 shots and 8 of his first 9 threes. And I mean, to do it in that way against the Lakers at the Staples Center and do it in a way that was reminiscent of his idol growing up in Kobe Bryant. I mean, Devin Booker was just putting on an array of shots, and he's done that for a lot of that series, but especially, put a stamp on it in Game 6. And he is so fun to watch. And he reminds you so much of Kobe because while he'll take more threes than Kobe traditionally did, but he finds these ways of using, mid-court or midway jumpers, to really light up other teams. And he's been very smart about it. And you can see the evolution of his game to where, it kind of hit this crescendo in Game 6, with 47.
And the thing is too about his game that I am appreciating more is how he's playing off the ball. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. And at the same time as well, as a playmaker, just getting everybody else involved, shooters on the outside, like Cameron Johnson, you have Mikal Bridges always in there in the corner. And even though his points value wasn't as high as usual as it was in the regular season, he was still an incredible player in this series, especially on the defensive end. You have a guy like Jay Crowder who was stone cold in the first like 4 games, and then all of a sudden started hitting his threes and started to, kind of use his mental edge against these Lakers in a way.
It's almost like the Lakers had done something to him personally, and he wanted to have revenge against them. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, pinpoint exactly when that was, but I think Jay Crowder had a little chip on his shoulder.
Well, you also think about that too with Jay Crowder in the history with LeBron James. Not only was he as his teammate in 2017-18 season, but you think about last year in the bubble, and Jay Crowder was a part of that Miami Heat team. And, he tends to try to get up for these games. And I think this season he just had enough. And, a lot of people don't like the way that he handled his business, and it's understandable because it's very brash. And even this Suns team was a little brash, the way that Devin Booker ended the game with the dunk. But at the same time, I'm not one of those unwritten rules people. That's just something to say that you sent a message, and you sent the defending champs home in the first round. And right. Yeah, there were injuries accompanying it, but the Suns had dealt with that with Chris Paul. Chris Paul's still clearly not 100% yet. Sucks to see Anthony Davis go down the way he did, hurt the groin injury. But there was, I don't think there was any excuse making here on the Lakers' part. Just didn't get enough all around. And that includes from LeBron James, I think.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, you could chalk it up, and I've given all the credit to the Suns as they deserve, but the Lakers season changed the minute that Anthony Davis got hurt months ago. I mean, before that point, the Lakers are 21-6. And then Anthony Davis goes down, and then a little while after that, LeBron James goes down. And while they came back for the playoffs, and we even saw a couple really big performances by Anthony Davis, you could tell that he wasn't still 100%, but you thought he's going to be good enough at least in the playoffs. And the same with LeBron. And LeBron was really working his way back from that high ankle sprain, but you could tell he was not right because he was not attacking the rim the way that we're accustomed to. But Phoenix took advantage of that, and they pinpointed these guys out, and then they went after them. And then, when it came to AD, things just got worse and worse. Once you get to that game 4 and he got injured, and the injuries just started to pile up. And this was kind of a catch-up game for the Lakers all season, and that they come off the short rest, like other teams did, especially the Miami Heat. But a lot of other teams had to battle injuries during the regular season. They had to battle COVID, all these things. So the Lakers are in that boat.
Yeah,
they get up to a great start, but then one of your stars goes down, the other one goes down, and then at that point, you're having guys try to do roles that they're not used to. The chemistry is way off, and just things just unraveled from there. And they just weren't able to put it back in time. And then they ran into, a young, hungry team in the Phoenix Suns, and the Suns had their number. I don't know how I would have loved to have seen it if everybody was healthy, even if it meant AD was able to come back even a little bit quicker, or LeBron hadn't got injured, whatever it was. But I mean, it would have been fun to see these two teams matched up if there weren't any injuries, but injuries are always a part of it. And, plenty of other teams dealt with it. And for the Lakers, as much as people are talking about if they can just get healthy for the postseason, they still got to be the favorites, because we're sitting there trying to figure out who else is it in the West they could really see as a legit contender that can come out. And everybody wants to default to the Lakers because they've got LeBron James and they've got Anthony Davis. But the other parts just didn't fit, especially when your two top stars are not right. I mean, if they're not right, the other guys just are not going to work with it. I mean, they need AD and LeBron to drive the machine. And when they're not going full throttle, you can see it affect the other guys. And mind you, I don't know if anybody expected it to affect them to the level that it did, where nobody could shoot. Nobody could do any of that. And just, it got to a point where it was a mental thing. And sometimes when you're a role player, I think you can rely on your star to okay, let's carry us through this hump. We can kind of get our confidence back, or we get on a roll again. And they just didn't have that here, and when Phoenix smelled blood in the water, they went for it. and they took them out. I mean, we saw that in game 5. We saw at the beginning of game 6, the Lakers tried to put together a run, but it was too little too late. And every time that they did, and they got within like 10 or 12, Phoenix would hit like a big 3, or they'd go on another 5-0 run or something. So they shut it down, and now the Lakers are the ones that have to sit there and, they've got to take it, because there's so many different questions about the future, of this team. There's so many questions about the stars. There's so many questions about how they're going to put together a roster next year. And people either love to root for the Lakers or they love to pile on the Lakers, and if you're going to be a Laker fan, you got to be able to take it. And this is one of those times.
No question. And, again, it sucked how the season came to an end for them, just because things were discombobulated pretty much all season for the Lakers. And, the rotations were different. I mean, Andre Drummond got 0 minutes last night, and he was brought in to be, that big piece to complement AD and LeBron. Ended up going to Marc Gasol, which probably was the right decision and probably should have happened sooner. Montrezl Harrell got some playing time there in game 6 that he wasn't getting in prior games. They were trying out guys like Ben McLemore and, giving other guys minutes to try and find something. And they almost did, but it was just too little too late. Another part of this series too, 2 guys for the Suns that I think deserve a ton of credit. 1, DeAndre Ayton, and 2, Campaign. On our podcast, I've been singing the praises of Campaign all day long. When we talk about that Suns bench and how effective it was all season long, and Campaign was pretty much the machine that got it going, no matter whether he was playing next to Devin Booker or Chris Paul. And I think just the speed and the pressure that he was putting on the rim, the confident shooting beyond the arc, he was just making plays left and right and pretty much playing himself into a paycheck.
Yeah, and the confidence that he had and the trust that he earned from his teammates to say, Chris is down, who's going to help us here? And Campaign's really stepped up, that's amazing. He was able to do that, and you mentioned DeAndre Ayton. I mean, look what he did in the playoffs. I mean, sure, there was some weak defense on him where the Lakers were not protecting him on pick and roll situations and whatnot. But you know what? Phoenix exploited that. And Ayton took advantage of it by getting to the rim, by rolling. He was hitting some, little 4 or 5 footers as well, but he was always in the right place at the right time. And that's part of the game.
Over 90%, I think, at the rim. That's just ridiculous, man. That's ridiculous. And it was just so, it's the efficiency. It's the, not settling for jumpers, being the guy to clean up a mess, getting to the free throw line. Yes, he can be better at the free throw line, but at the same time, you just think about all the good that he did in that sense. And a lot of people around Phoenix, at least, the fan base, the media, were always wondering, can DeAndre Ayton be the guy to be a third piece that can be on a championship team? And I think in this series, bringing the best out of him and really stepping up to the plate, and one of the best debut playoff series as far as efficiency goes in the history of a big man, that deserves a lot of credit. So that was a big time series. I'm sure we'll ponder what the Lakers are going to do from here on out. But
they're pigeonholed what they could do. That's the big thing that everybody's going to be talking about. Like,
I'm sure we'll churn out 1,000 articles on that.
Oh yeah, because you're sitting there going, okay, what does Anthony Davis have to do to stay healthier because of all his injury problems? There's been talk about, should he change trainers or change his workout in the offseason? What's LeBron going to do? Because now you're talking about a guy that's going to be 37 and going into his 19th year, so what is he going to be able to do? What do they do with the cast around them? They have cap limitations because they're already, with 4 players, between LeBron, AD, KCP, and with Kyle Kuzma, they're already over the cap. And that's even before they re-sign some other guys. And, what are they going to do to change the roster? LeBron and AD alone make $76 million. KCP and Kuzma combined for 26. Kuzma just
started that extension. Yeah.
Yes. So, he's not even, they can't even really trade him until I think it's like July 1st or whenever it is. Cause there's already people piling on code. They got to get rid of Kuz. And there's a lot of different things like, who do they end up keeping? Dennis Schroeder turned down that contract extension. He's now saying, I want to stay there. but it's going to be for big money, and the Lakers are probably going to have to pay him. What do they do? Can they keep Caruso and Montrezl Harrell, who saw his role diminish, as the season went on, especially in the playoffs? Does he exercise his player option, or is he going to be able to find a bigger deal? And what happens with Drummond? There's tons of questions left and right, and there's limitations to what the Lakers can do. So, it's not only two, stars. One is aging, and you wonder when age is really going to catch up. Another, has not been able to stay healthy all the time. And then, the supporting cast. I mean, obviously they need more talent. The two things they need, one is the most obvious thing in the world, and every team needs it, is you need shooting. And the other is they need to get more athletic. And with their cap structure, Rob Pelinka and that group are going to have, they've got a tough task ahead of them. But if AD and LeBron are healthy, you still got a head start.
No doubt. No doubt. And, the years are going to be piling up on LeBron. I understand that. But his basketball IQ is just too good to not, be LeBron James. And I think this is like the first time that we've seen, a human side a little bit.
Yeah.
As far as like, he wasn't attacking the rim quite as often. He started to towards the end of that game 6 over in the third quarter and stuff, but a lot of jumpers, a lot of passiveness that you don't usually see out of him. And I think that more had to do with the injury than anything else. And maybe it's also because Phoenix, like you said, came out and gave him a right uppercut out the gate, and and
there's no spacing for LeBron either. I mean, Phoenix made a wall and just said, "Oh, you want to shoot? Go for it. Let any of you guys out here, you want to shoot, go for it." So, by the way, can I put my neck on the line here and make one really brash, bold prediction for next season for the Lakers?
Go for it.
The starting point guard of the 21-22 Los Angeles Lakers will be John Wall.
All right. Says John Wall. I'm sure a lot of people are saying Kyle Lowry. Some people are probably asking about Damian Lillard. Everyone's going to keep doing that. I'm like, how are you going to pay him?
John Wall's going to get bought out by the Rockets, I think. You think? That would be, that's part of my prediction. That's the only way they could do it. It's the only way.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's speaking of Damian Lillard, let's go on and see what the other series that closed out yesterday was. And that was the Denver Nuggets going into Portland and ripping out the hearts of the Blazers. And a lot of people want to talk about Dame and the supporting cast there, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But I think this is more of an opportunity to commend Michael Malone and the job that he's done with this team, just with their identity, with their refusal to die, their mental toughness, the resilience. I don't know if I've quite seen that kind of mental makeup from a team that a lot of people threw away as soon as Jamal Murray was out. And, I'm not saying that I thought this team was going to win the series, because I didn't. I picked the Blazers. But I was also smart enough not to know to leave them to the side just because of that injury, because they had, a bunch of depth. I think the world of Monte Morris, and he might've been the second best guard in that series. I think that the story with Austin Rivers being out of the league and then signing a 10-day and reclaiming basically, the position of being a key role player on this team next to an MVP in Nikola Jokic. Aaron Gordon shot the heck out of the ball in this series and was a pivotal, played a pivotal role. And then Michael Porter Jr., comes out, lightning in the first couple games. And then when he got to Portland, ended up stopped taking shots. So what did he do in game 5 and 6? Took a lot of shots. And guess what? A lot of them went in. So, you look at Facu Campazzo, who was an irritant to play against, constantly never stopping as far as, getting deflections and being up in people's noses. And, even though a lot of people don't like the flop that happened against, CJ McCollum, but like just kind of trying to get that edge a little bit mentally. So this team, I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't want to see them. And I know that the Suns are, well kept and a very, tested team already. But I would not I would not take out the Nuggets to not possibly make their second straight Western Conference Finals.
I mean, I know a lot of people really wondered about what was going to happen once Jamal Murray went down. And I think, the Nuggets might have been the favorites to come out of the West up until he got hurt. But
Right.
once he went down, everybody goes, well, now they're missing, one of their big components. But Jokic has continued to play on this astronomical level. And he's a matchup nightmare for anyone, but especially for Phoenix. He is going to be difficult. This is once again one of these games where size matters when it comes to the matchup between, the Nuggets and the Suns. And Jokic could probably have his way again. And I'm going to be curious to see what Phoenix does. But, you mentioned, Michael Porter Jr., been waiting for that guy to step up. He came out on fire in the beginning of Game 6. I mean, he was shooting lights out. And the thing was too, as big of a punch as the Nuggets threw at the beginning of that game, Portland matched every bit of it. Lillard was on fire. That carryover from the instant classic Game 5, where that dude could have been blindfolded backwards, on the key on the other side of the court, and I think would have hit a shot, because Dame was just in his zone.
I was audibly screaming like a 10-year-old during that game. I'm not gonna lie.
I was too. I mean, when you're sitting here and you're doing the whole like that and stuff, you're like, oh my god, whether you're just an NBA fan, I mean, when you've got Woj tweeting, come on, because this dude's banking threes and sending the game into a second overtime. I mean, it was just incredible. But I mean, Dame came out, he was on fire at the beginning of Game 6, and the Blazers had that game in control. They really, and you kept waiting for them to put it away. They're like, okay, you're up by 15, you're by 19. But the Nuggets just kind of stayed in it. And then at the end of the third quarter, they turned it on. And next thing you know, they're up and their lead just kept kind of slowly growing. And you could tell that Lillard was tired. Things had caught up to him. And he was, that second half, he was spent and he could not do anything to save his team at that point. And the season just slowly, and nothing against the Nuggets, but sadly just slipped away from the Blazers there, and now the Nuggets are moving on, and their backcourt has been just an absolute mess since Murray has been gone. Like you said, I mean, they're trying to put it together, but hey, give credit. It's worked so far, and give those guys credit. I mean, Austin Rivers, like you
defensively, the job that he did though in this series against Lillard and against McCollum. I know that Lillard dropped what he dropped on, in Game 5, but I think that defensively he was huge. And then you think about the string of threes that he set off. I think it was in Game 4, maybe Game 3, but
when's the last time you saw a guy that's more or less like a minimum guy that's been around the league and just a role player play with the swagger and the confidence of an Austin Rivers? I mean, and people have roasted him over the years for different things. And he comes on the court and he just has this kind of, the swagger to him. Like, yeah, I'm as good as anybody on this court. Watch this. Watch what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And that's what I think I admire about him most is because, most guys coming out of that situation, coming out of Duke, being such a highly rated player out of high school, getting drafted in the top 10 and you don't pan out as that star per se. And, you're scuffling around, you're essentially becoming a journeyman. But you've still found a way to stick around the league and contribute in very positive ways and continuing to work on your craft and continuing to try and get better. So, you got to respect it. And for him to come up on this stage, knowing that Jamal Murray, by all intents and purposes, was the second most important player on this team, and the way that Rivers and Morris and Campazzo have come together and tried to just kind of collectively fill in for that, it's commendable. And again, I think the credit goes to Michael Malone, just for the way that he binds these guys together. Their biggest issue is when they just go on these random droughts. That's what I noticed. If they go on a random drought, then yeah, they'll be in trouble. But it starts with the head of the snake with Jokic. You mentioned it already, just the problems that he presents. He threw some of the most ridiculous passes back to basket, just finding guys out in the corners. His vision's incredible. The shooting is incredible. the post moves, whatever it may be. He's just another level. And then you think about too, for the Nuggets, they're going to get Will Barton back here soon. They potentially get PJ Dozier back soon. So they're going to get a little bit healthier, and they're not a team to mess with right now. I just don't think that, especially because of the experiences of the past and now that they've been there and done that.
Well, we can get to the Blazers a bit here in a minute as well, and what we think is going to come with them. But I mean, it's an interesting series, I think, between the Nuggets and the Suns, because I sit there and we talk about these matchups, and I look at, especially when it comes to the wings and how they match up. I mean, we know about Jokic, and how good he is going to be, who's going to match up against Chris Paul, and how healthy is he going to be, on the other side. But, if they get Will Barton back, and if they can get a PJ Dozier back, if they can help when it comes to their backcourt, and we can see the Nuggets with a little bit more experience, obviously, than what they've had, going through this in the past, I'm really curious to see how far this team can go. And by the way, you mentioned Aaron Gordon, and I think we both really like that move. And some people are wondering, like, how exactly is he going to fit and what's it going to be? I mean, this is the guy too that quietly, once again, is just doing the right things. And he hit the dagger shot that put the Blazers away in Game 6.
Yep. Put him up 9. But this series, I'm interested in, because Denver plays a very up and down pace, and the Suns are more methodical half court. So I'm wondering who's going to speed up who, or who's going to slow down who, and I think that this is where having a Chris Paul who's experienced everything. I mean, you saw the way that when the Lakers were making that run last night and cut it down to 10, how he was the cooler, and he was somebody that didn't rush possessions, and to be able to calm down a young team like the Suns in that moment, and make them realize that we don't got to get sped up here. We're the ones in control. We are the ones who hold the keys right now. And, he slowed it down. I think he scored like 10 points in that quarter or something. Like, that's the kind of veteran leadership that they're going to need in this situation against the Nuggets, because the Nuggets are going to be hungry, man. You think about, they missed out on the finals last year. The year before that, they got stopped early. They are absolutely going to be hungry for this.
They are. And, I go back to talking about, like, Jokic and what he's going to be able to do. And they're going to push the pace. Like you said, Phoenix is going to try to control this, as much as we can sit going, okay, obviously they'll put Ayton on Jokic, but is that going to do anything? And he's still going to be able to find other guys. But on the other side of the court, who, considering Denver is not exactly a defensive-minded team, much to the chagrin of Michael Malone, who has pulled out almost every follicle of hair in his head because they don't play good enough defense on a regular basis. Who's going to guard Devin Booker? Because you can see the confidence in that dude's game right now and where he is. Because, even like you said before, not only is he filling it up, but he doesn't always need the ball. And he knows kind of like, now's the time to get hot. Now's the time to get going. Now's the time to put up shots. But he doesn't force anything. If he doesn't have it, I think he's more than happy to find somebody else. He's found that little sweet spot now. And you put that with the confidence and having Chris Paul, with him. Even earlier in the year, what we were all talking about, like, oh, CP3 and Devin Booker haven't found their chemistry together. Like, the Phoenix plays better when one of them's off the court. But we thought, like, as the season goes on and they get more reps, they can get past that. Well, now they're past that. And now, they're in the playoffs. So, I think that pacing and whose star is going to be able to really kind of control things is going to play a big factor in that series.
If I could actually make a suggestion, and this probably won't happen because, there's, you obviously lose out. It's a numbers game. But if Devin Booker comes out and again, like, goes like 20 points in the first quarter or something like that, I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael Malone go to Shaq Harrison again. He did it for like a minute in the first half against Damian Lillard in one of the games. And the 3 possessions that he guarded him, he got a missed shot, a steal, and I think a run out. So, like, he's got that weapon. He's got, I think Campazzo will probably try to get under Devin's skin a little bit, because Devin is definitely one of those people that buys into that, that game a little bit of being able to get frustrated quickly.
I don't have Campazzo guarding him if I'm trying to be an irritant, and I know that I'm bringing a double. Because because I think Phoenix is going to probably try to do a bunch of different things, like depending. I think they'll switch coverages, throughout the game because they just don't want them to get comfortable. Like, okay, are we going to bring a double? When are we going to bring a double? Is it going to be when you get to a certain spot, or is it when you get a certain touch, or is it going to be when you first put the ball, on the court? Are we going to try to single cover you? Like Aaron Gordon could probably try to, I think that's an interesting matchup. They put Gordon on him for a little while, and I think, Phoenix is going to be in a situation where they say, okay, or Denver's going to be a situation. They say, okay, we know you guys hit shots, in first round against the Lakers. Do it again. There's going to be some of that. Like, okay, do it again.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's probably that's what they want. They want him to just fire him up, and hopefully, DeAndre Ayton ain't going to get as many offensive rebounds against someone like Jokic, who constantly is grabbing those boards and, has that bigger body that the Lakers, tried to employ against DeAndre Ayton. But
the Lakers had big bodies. I just don't know if they were good big bodies. I mean, I have a big body. I don't consider it very good, but I don't know if I'm stopping anybody.
Oh,
mine's big in the wrong way, though.
Okay. So you want to talk about the flip side? Because I feel like that is a point of emphasis right now is the Blazers and Damian Lillard and what happens here now. And I think that is, really relevant at the moment. So a lot of people are obviously campaigning for Damian Lillard to request a trade for the 5th straight year.
Don't put me in that.
I don't.
Because he belongs in Portland.
I'll say I don't know if that's what's going to happen. I think that this iteration of the team probably has to come to an end, though. And that's no slight to, any of the teammates, like such as CJ McCollum or Yusuf Nurkic, Robert Covington, who just joined the fray this year and, did a pretty solid job in the playoffs, honestly, except for like a missed dunk, which was pretty crucial, but
2 missed dunks, almost back to back, but yeah.
They need to focus on defense. Zach Collins is going to, make a big difference there. We know that he's had his injury problems since he's come into the league, but he's also been a decent deterrent, a decent enough shooter. But this backcourt with CJ, I don't know. I think that the sample size of 4 out of 5 series that you don't get past the first round is probably good enough to say, okay, maybe we make a change, try something a little different here. So what that move is, I don't know. I'm curious to see if they keep Norman Powell around. He's going to cost a pretty penny because of the shallow free agent class that we have coming up. But I think that the slashing ability that Norm brought to the table was big time for Dame. And then that's the funny thing too about this series that, people cherry pick a lot and say, Dame needs more help, which is completely true. But to the degree of where they're like, you got to tear the whole thing down. I'm like, I don't think you got to tear the whole thing down. Just maybe make some tweaks here and there. I suppose that CJ is a major change, but like the teammates in the games that they won, Damian was like averaging like 23 a game, and like losses, Damian was averaging like over 40 a game. So clearly you want your teammates to be producing so that Damian doesn't have quite that onus.
I have a hard time thinking that Damian Lillard's going to ask for a trade. He loves Portland. He loves the Blazers. He's always said the right thing. And you don't just give up on a guy like that. It's not a situation like in Houston when it came to James Harden. I have a hard time thinking that Dame Lillard's going to, request a trade. Or try to force one. We'll see what the future holds with him. But if you're Portland, to me, I think you hold on to him, and anything else you want to restructure, you do it. But Dame is still your cornerstone. They're another team that's got cap problems. They're already over the cap, and that's even before. What are you going to do with Norm Powell? What are you going to do with Zach Collins? Carmelo Anthony. And by the way, here's a little subplot on the whole thing. Was that Carmelo Anthony's final game in the NBA?
Shouldn't be. If it should not be.
I hope not.
Should not be. He can come off the bench 15 to 20 minutes and score and get rebounds, and he's shown more of a commitment on the defensive end than any time of his career.
Yeah.
There's no way that should be it.
Yeah, and Nurkic is another part where I don't think Yusuf necessarily knows his contract, or unless he is going to be somebody that's going to be asking for a trade because, after the game.
He came out inflamed.
Oh, yeah. He's like, well, we'll see if I'm going to be here,
Because the right situation, this is
the right situation. I'm like, and he was talking about his contract, like, only $4 million is guaranteed. I'm like, no, all 12 million, if they don't exercise it, you will be on the books and you'll be with that team next season. I mean, there's no way they're not going to do that. I mean, maybe they would trade him, but they're not just going to be like, oh, that's it. We're going to take the 4 million and bye-bye.
Not to mention in that series, any time that Nurkic sat on the bench, they were dead.
Yeah.
And Cantor had a tough time. They tried Rocco I think Rocco at the 5 was honestly their best suggestion as a backup center in that series, but they didn't do it nearly enough. They had Cantor in there for the first 3 games or so, and they got torched. They got torched.
And Cantor's another guy that, I mean, I know they like him up there, and he's solid for his role off the bench, not exactly as a defensive stopper, but he's a free agent as well. So I mean, the changes that they probably need to make are upgrading when it comes to your wings and your bigs. They got to get more of a defensive identity. Terry Stotts has been the coach there for a long time, and he's like, I've got 2 years left on my contract. Well, I don't think he's going to be there though. And I think that's where one of the big changes is going to be. And, there's already talk, there's been some talk for like a couple of weeks, but even more today that Jason Kidd is kind of the hot name when it comes to the Blazers, if they make a coaching change. So, we'll see, but I think that's where one of the biggest changes is going to be is there. And then then after that, it's going to be, how do we reshape this roster where we can become more defensive minded and really build around Damian Lillard? And that probably means trading CJ McCollum. And I'm not exactly sure what they can get for him and who is going to be interested. I'm not saying they'll get nothing for him. He's a very, very good player, but
gotta get a small forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see what exactly this team does and what kind of parts that they move. Cause I mean, you could see wholesale changes. You could see 1 or 2 changes. It could be a difference. I mean, maybe coaching makes a big difference with this as well. So, Portland has a very, very intriguing offseason coming their way.
No doubt. And, I've put this out there on our show before, but instead of trying to get a hot name on the market, might as well just try and, ask David Vanterpool to come back home, because that's who, Damian Lillard's endorsed for the last few years to get a head coaching job. He's over there in Minnesota right now. You got passed over for Chris Finch. It's almost like a perfect fit. So
yeah, that would be another one. Maybe they want to get somebody that hasn't been around the team for a while, like really look, outside, but Vanderpool definitely deserves a shot somewhere. Hopefully he'll get it soon.
No question. Yeah. Do you want to stick on playoffs and the matchup coming up tonight? Because we usually don't do these live, but we have one playoff matchup tonight, which could be an elimination. Who knows? We'll see. Because the home team can't win in this series. So what's your gut here? Because you got the Clippers going into Dallas, and it wasn't the best performance for the Clippers last game, especially down the stretch when there were turnovers. Dallas didn't even shoot that great last game or the game before that. So they're due for another good shooting performance from their guys around Luka. So what's your thought here?
Well, I mean, you look at that last game. I mean, the Mavericks are held to 105 and Luka scored 42 of it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And the thing is, like, Paul George and Kawhi, they had solid games. It's the other people that are around them. And even, down the stretch, they missed opportunities, including Nick Batum right at the rim,
Young Terrence Mann didn't know to take the layup. He tried to find someone there at the end.
That was one too. I was like,
I felt bad for him though.
And he was kicking himself, and that's just a young mistake. I mean, a guy that was in the moment, but Batum missed, a layup even when he got it there. It could help them. I mean, it's the role players of the Clippers, and this has been a problem all season for them. Is when they're in close games, while you have PG and you have Kawhi, you need some of the other guys to help you out a little bit, and they have not been good in tight games, down the stretch. Meanwhile, the Mavericks, they have been. And they've got a closer, with Luka that, as good as the two stars on the Clippers are, Luka controls the game in a different way. And, it's going to be rocking in Dallas, I mean, and what I want to see is when it comes to this Clippers team, because when they were down 0-2, they stepped up in that game 3, and, because I was really wondering, like, do they have the mentality to do it? Can they suck it up? And they did. But can they do it here in a closeout game, as well? And if they get behind early, what is going to happen with this team? I mean, they got behind in that game 3, but man, they sucked it up and they pulled it out, and they carried over into game 4 as well. But, this is going to be quite the test for them. And, we'll see if can Dallas really take it to them early on? Can they start shooting? I think it's going to be, an awesome atmosphere. I mean, this is what we've been waiting for. I mean, we got fans there. We've got a meaningful game. You've got Luka. You're in Dallas. It's going to be, full arena. Can they take out the Clippers? And if the Clippers go out, then you want to talk about a team that's got a ton of questions in this offseason and what direction they're going to go, and kind of, missing out on expectations and kind of feeling the wrath of people going, look at what you haven't been able to do yet. I mean, the pressure is immense for the Clippers to, win this series, which means winning tonight.
Yep. And that's a pressure that they haven't really had all year, because they've kind of just flown under the radar. But here we are again, facing elimination. It's time to step up to the plate. And, I have a feeling that it is going to go 7. Again, Ty Lue's been in this predicament before as a playoff coach. I know he doesn't have LeBron, but I think that the adjustments that he's made for the most part for this Clippers team to be in this series after going down 0-2 have been good. Not playing Ivica Zubac, going, with his guys like Morris and Batum, and having, Rondo out there with Kawhi and PG, playing Terrence Mann more. I think those have been smart adjustments. I think that, they just have to take care of the ball. They're a veteran-laden squad. They haven't played together much, but they're a veteran-laden squad. So if any team's built for this type of pressure and environment, it's one like that. So
what did you make of the Rondo death stare to Kawhi at the end of game 5?
That got me right away.
What are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing over there, man? I mean, it
was after the quick 3 take, right? They were down 4, and it was in the corner, and Kawhi threw up something real quick, and that was ball game.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, I think Rondo, he can have a big effect on this. I think he's been a little bit frustrated by obviously different things, because it's like, we have the talent. It's just making the right play at the right time and being smart about it. That's one of the big things that he cares about. That's Rondo. And I think that is what has frustrated him in a lot of different ways so far, so, can guys make the right play? Can they make the smart play at the right time, against, a Dallas team that's, I'm curious to see how far they can go if they get past this, because, I mean, you've got Luka, and, some people wonder about, like, hey, they're a net.
Timmy Hardaway can go off for 30 any night he wants to.
They're a matchup nightmare for other teams. They really are.
Finney-Smith has arms for days. Like, he's been pretty much the MVP of the series so far. Taking on the assignment of Paul George and guarding Kawhi, and like, he's been outstanding. Even the nights that he's not shooting well, he makes a tremendous impact on the game.
Mark Cuban's going to be sitting, on the baseline at the game tonight in Dallas. Can we get Ballmer on the other baseline, like straight across from him?
This is what you want to see. You want to see
owner cam. Owner cam.
One's a little bit more more emotional than the other.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ballmer is insane out there, man.
One will be yelling to the refs, and the other one, while his team's winning, will just be like,
"Oh yeah,
like Mark Cuban doesn't do that."
Yeah, Keepin does a little bit, but he's more of a and yelling at the refs, and then Ballmer's leaning back in his chair and fist pumping or whatever. I mean, just be something, man. But I mean, I'm
something else.
It's fascinating because, like I said, the kind of the after effects of what could happen if the Clippers lose, considering the expectations of putting PG and Kawhi together, and what comes next, and trying, because I mean they are really stuck with that roster. But if Kawhi wants to leave, he could leave.
Yeah, and then everyone's linking him to the Lakers already because he
can't go to
Los Angeles.
He cannot go to the Lakers. There is no cap space for him.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, where are you getting this money?
That's impossible. But I mean, he could go to the Knicks. But remember, he also wanted to go to LA because he likes LA. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't leave, but I find that difficult. But the thing is, like, they're really stuck with the contracts they gave out last year, especially to
Luke Kennard
and Marcus Morris, with what they can do going forward.
Yeah, no question. Do you want to stick with the last team remaining here in the West, or do you want to go Eastern Conference hunting over here? What do you want?
Well, I mean, if you briefly want to talk about the Jazz,
I think the Jazz deserve to be brought up because a lot of people were talking mad S after that first game against the Grizzlies. And then what happened? Donovan Mitchell came back, and then the rest of the team just followed suit. They stayed the course, and they just were the better veteran team. Games 2 and 3, clearly you just saw the way that they closed those games, that they were more experienced. They've been to the moment. Mike Conley became the guy to send his old franchise home. No one really talks about Mike Conley as much as they should, especially in this series, because he was just excellent. Finding his teammates, shooting threes, in clutch moments, getting other guys involved, taking it inside and using that floater. Like, he's a solid player, and, he deserves his due. And just like I think, Rudy Gobert deserves his due. And it's easy to be turned off by Rudy's, style sometimes. He can be a little bit over exaggerating at times with the flops and stuff like that. And I understand it, but when you look at the actual real impact that he has on the floor, and you look at him and you watch him, teams don't want to come in there. John Morant did. Don't get me wrong. John Morant tried to dunk on Rudy Gobert every single game, and you have to admire that about the kid.
Yeah.
But Rudy is just a deterrent. No one, if he is standing there as an anchor, no one wants to come in that paint. And that is kind of gets held against him because not a lot of defensive field goal attempts at the rim are against Rudy, because there are teams actively passing it around like a hot potato if they see that he is standing there.
Yeah.
The way that he rebounds, the offensive impact he had in Game 5 was tremendous. He's worked on that too. This team, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, Royce O'Neal, one of the best glue guys in the game. They've got something there. So there's a decent chance. There is a decent chance that we see Jazz and Suns in that conference finals, or Jazz and Nuggets. Good for them, because there were a lot of people thinking that these teams were pretenders the whole time because it was just the regular season, and they're going out and getting the job done right now.
I think so. And, you look at, I love the backcourt from what it brings for the playoffs. Donovan Mitchell, I think, is like the next version of Chris Paul, and the way that he can control games and just kind of his demeanor out there and what he does. Then you've got Conley as well. And hopefully he is okay. I know he had the hamstring injury at the end of the last game.
Reevaluated before game 1. Yep.
Yeah. So hopefully he's okay. But, you look at this team last year and carried over to this year, and like the roster really didn't undergo any changes, but they changed their style. They said, hey, we're going to take even more threes. We're going to play even more up tempo. We're going to cater more to what we do. And it is work for them. I mean, that's why they had the best record in the NBA this season. I know people say like, well, there's still some holes in their game. Yeah, there are. Everybody has some holes right now, basically. I mean, you can sit there and pick apart just about any team, but when I look at the other teams, especially in the West, and I say, I think Utah's right there with any of them that are left, and if that backcourt plays to the way that I expect, and if Gobert keeps playing, defense, as good as he is, and doesn't try to overexert himself on offense, especially. And if they just hit threes like they did during the regular season, I mean, they're going to be tough. I mean, they went ice cold in that game 1 against Memphis. And then since then, I mean, they've kind of turned it back on. And we saw what they did in the closeout game where they just went full throttle. But I mean, the Jazz they're really, really good, and I think we're going to see them in the conference finals.
I think so too. I do. Unless the Clippers somehow find out to pull out 2 and then get there. I think that was your pick. I think that could happen too.
You picked there's history there too. Come out the West.
There's history there too, because that's the first time that Joe Ingles appeared in a playoff game. That's when he went legend against the Clippers. I think it was in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. But that was a fun series to watch. So there's a little bit of history there too, even though the teams are very much different at this point. Yeah. Eastern Conference wise, what do you want to hit? I know you had a couple things here on the outline docket that you wanted to hit that were not playoff related, but I'll let you take it.
Well, when it comes to the playoffs, I mean, I think the matchup that everybody's been waiting for and looking forward to, and is going to happen here in the second round, is we are going to get the Nets against the Bucks.
Love it. By the way, before we start on that, Nekias Duncan, amazing playoff primer on that. Outstanding playoff primer. It's must read. There is film breakdown in there. There is what to watch out for. That's live on basketballnews.com. Outstanding job by Nekias.
I mean, this is, you'll back up in your corner and come out swinging, between these two teams. And it's going to be fantastic. I mean, it's too bad they both have, a few or an injury on each team, nothing too major, but I mean, the Bucks missing DiVincenzo, the Nets don't have Jeff Green right now. I mean, that you always want everybody to be full strength, but the stars are there. And we've got the big 3 of the Bucks against the big 3 of the Nets. And I think what it's going to come down to the 2 things: who can hit clutch shots and who can actually play a little bit of defense, because both teams are defensive, nightmares to try to stop.
Yeah, definitely. There's just like a curiosity that I have there, because you think about the perimeter defenders that the Bucks have. Drew Holiday wasn't there last year. You have Chris Middleton. Those 2 were just tremendous in the Heat series. Tremendous. You got Giannis. Losing Dante DiVincenzo, definitely a big deal. But Pat Connaughton can fill in enough, I think, of that role. He's not quite as elusive, I guess. I don't know if Pat Connaughton rebounds quite the way that Dante DiVincenzo does. Nekias made a great point about, DiVincenzo is really good at slithering around screens on defense. And that, Pat doesn't quite have that ability. He's more getting into bodies type of defender. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in DeAndre Jordan. Does he get playing time in this series? Because he didn't play at all.
No, he does not.
I guess let's see, there's quite a few factors here. Like, the Bucks are so confident right now. And I don't know if, this week off has cooled them down at all, though, too. That's another thing that I'm thinking about.
But the thing is that I look at when it comes to the Bucks, and we always wonder about, like, do you want to keep playing or do you want rest? It sucks that they're losing. They don't have DiVincenzo for the rest of the playoffs. But when you look at teams that are healthy, they're one of the healthiest teams out there, and the chemistry is just incredible right now. I mean, we can see Brooklyn's chemistry coming together. It really hasn't been too big of a problem. It's more or less like keeping their big 3 on the court together. But for Milwaukee, they played together for most of the season, and we've seen that chemistry just grow and grow. And this is why they went out and they got Drew Holiday, because they said, we're missing another piece. And they said, you know what, we'll do what it takes to go out there and get this stabilizer, to get this veteran guy. And
hilarious that people think they overpaid for him, by the way. It's just absolutely hilarious.
You look at it now, it's just like, okay, so those picks are going to be late first round, whoopity freaking do, and they've got a guy that's, just a third part of the big three, and is a huge difference maker, especially now, in the playoffs where you need that guy. This is what has been missing from this team. And you can feel they've got a little bit of a swagger. Like you said, it feels, even the last 2 years when they haven't gone as far as people thought maybe they would, it feels a little bit different this year.
It does.
But now they have a massive test in that they have to face Brooklyn in the second round. Maybe it is better that they face Brooklyn now. I mean, Brooklyn's already obviously gone through a round against the Celtics, but maybe it's better that they face them now before the Nets can develop even more chemistry and everything going on. But it's fascinating to see, all of the different matchups and cross matchups and, who's going to be able to control tempo and who can hit a big shot. And is anybody going to play any defense, because I mean, there's points where they can, and there's points where they're not going to be. I mean, how small are these teams going to go? I mean, KD against Giannis, seeing that matchup alone, it's going to be incredible.
No doubt. I'm looking at the role players in this, though. A lot of this is going to be that 3-on-3 that you're mentioning. But I'm looking at can Bryn Forbes stay as hot as he's been? What's Bobby Portis going to do in this series? PJ Tucker being another weapon of choice for Mike Budenholzer. Do we see Jeff Teague at all? Because of these are the things I'm thinking about. Because the Nets equally have very good role players. You have Joe Harris, who shot the cover off of the ball this year. I know he wasn't amazing in that first round series against the Celtics, but he had his moments where he came out flame throwing.
He's a massive X factor, massive.
Got guys like Landry Shamet and Bruce Brown, a huge piece. Jeff Green not being around is actually a big missing part of their team. Just from the versatility standpoint and from a team morale standpoint. Blake Griffin, was huge in the regular season, but he kind of was a little bit out of place, I guess, in that series last against Boston. So, we'll see if he can, regroup. So they've got a lot of good role players going against each other. And, it's typical me to look at the role players when you have the star power that is invested in this. But, I look at that and, as far as the Nets go, they're still only going to be in their sixth playoff game together between James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. And you look at, James Harden sets the table. He was ridiculous in that Boston series at getting to the rim. I think he shot over 70% on drives. Which was just insane. He had one-on-one matchups on the perimeter, and so he got past them, put it up for a layup. Most of the time, drawing a foul, getting to the line for an and one. It wasn't even just the step-back threes that he was doing his damage. He was literally just getting inside and getting past people. And it's not like he was even that quick. It's just he's so good at using his body to get into people and shield the ball. Sometimes it is a wide open layup, but I just think that, bringing that up is, necessary. And then, you look at Kyrie and off the bounce, he's just, I told you this out the other day, he's just like a show in and of itself. The way that he puts a ball on a string, spin moves, crossovers, the English off of the backboard on some of the layups, the mid-range pull-up, the threes from the right elbow, which is his patented spot. It's just all a show. And he is just so talented. He is so talented as a scorer. He's the de facto shooting guard. I understand that. But he is just such a fun player to watch. And then, KD is KD. KD sleepwalks his way to 30 at these days, man. Which, Josh Eberle brought this up the other day. For us not to be talking about Kevin Durant like he's a god right now, to come back from an Achilles injury, to be as efficient as he's been, to be basically just as athletic, just as effective, if not more effective averaging more points, being on pretty much the title favorite now, and doing what he's doing on a nightly basis is unheard of off of an Achilles injury, especially. I know the ACLs, easier to come back with, the science these days, but my goodness, man, you think about what KD's doing and it's just, wow.
Yeah. I look at this and I think some of the biggest factors in this game are, can Giannis still put up points while being efficient? Like putting up 30 without having to take 30 shots.
Well, they're going to drop against him, and not to interrupt you, they're going to drop against him. And that's what happened in, that last game that they played in the regular series, the regular season. And Giannis was knocking down 15 footers. He was just had them like just down in their heels. He was either on the baseline doing turnarounds, or he was slowing himself up before he got in too deep, and he was taking what the defense was giving him and he was shooting jumpers.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to try the same thing in game one, just because it'll be a feel out. And I'm interested to see if he makes them pay.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I think that's what they're going to do. But to me, for the Bucks, that's a big factor. And I think also, is Chris Middleton going to play as good as he did in the first round? And if they can kind of get that, great, performances out of him, consistent stuff out of him and this whole round, that's going to be huge. And then on the flip side for the Nets, are they going to be able to get stops, especially when they go small and they've got Durant, at the 5, or Blake Griffin's at the 5, whatever you want to say. But when they have that smaller lineup, are they going to be able to get stops and critical points? To me, because I really don't worry too much about their offense. They can go stagnant at different times. And do they fall into a rut where they're taking too many jumpers or something like that? Yeah. And that's what the Bucks want to do. I mean, pick your poison when it comes to the Nets, when you're facing James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. It's just like, I don't know, go to the church and, get a blessing on you. That's all you can do at this point. But I mean, that's basically what they have to try to do. And, keep the game close, at different points. And then pick your spots of when you can try to, take advantage of them on offense. But when it comes down to the crunch time, can the Nets get stops? I think the Bucks can, even as difficult as that's going to be. Yeah. But I do wonder, can the Nets get it when they need to?
Gonna find out tomorrow. I think that's the first game, right? Saturday is the Bucks Nets.
I think right.
Yeah, I believe it's Saturday. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong on live television or live stream, whatever it's called. But I think that's the first game. The first game is on, it is Saturday, 7:30 p.m. And then the other series we'll talk about, the Hawks and the Sixers, starts Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Let's get into that because, I was, it was a toss-up between the Hawks and the Knicks for me, but I just thought that the inexperience would show. Because, you look at the Hawks and you look at the Grizzlies and you look at the Suns, the difference between the Suns and those two teams is that the Suns have multiple veterans that have either been to championships or, been all-stars and have kind of held their hand in a way. The Grizzlies were the second youngest team in the league. The Hawks, I'm sure, are probably up there. I didn't think that someone like a Danilo Gallinari and, a Solomon Hill would be enough to, commandeer a young team like this and show them the way. But you're just seeing that the young guys took it right off the bat. And Nate McMillan, what a job that he's done. It all starts with Trae Young, but I mean, you look at from top to bottom, there's just this young talent, man. And you think that DeAndre Hunter is not even completely healthy yet. And he was a huge part of their team before he went down with injury in regular season. Clint Capella is one of the most underrated centers in the league. Goes up and gets offensive rebounds, blocks the hell out of you, alters shots, the perfect lob partner for Trae. Another lob partner for Trae is John Collins, and he was just talking mad crap to Julius Randle through that whole series.
Clint Capella started trash talking out of nowhere because they were playing so well.
He did. No one expected Clint Capella to be saying that the Knicks weren't physical. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, they've when it came to that series, I really thought that the Knicks could muster up enough offense against the Hawks. And the Hawks put together. I mean, we can, you start with Trae Young, but you look at all the other guys and how well that they played. And, everybody seemed to really do their part. They controlled, most of those games. Bogdanovich has been just a godsend for them.
Again, I talked about Chris Paul being a cooler. How about Bogdanovich being a cooler? Like anytime the Knicks mounted any run in that series, Bogdanovich would come down and hit a three. And I mean, I know that, it gets repetitive, hit a three, but like legit, like he's the cooler. He is the cooler. And, even Kevin Huerter had his moments in this series. Like they have a lot of, I don't know if they have the same confidence as the Suns, but Trae being the head of the snake, I think that, he's got them in this mind frame of we're playing with house money at this point.
Exactly. I mean, they have nothing to lose. I mean, some people really wondered, like halfway through the season, were they even going to make the playoffs, much less end up, in the 4th seed. Now they're in the second round of taking out the Knicks, and they're going to take on, a Sixers team that, once again, one of the favorites to come out of the East. But the big question mark is Joel Embiid and his health now. He's got the small meniscus tear. He's day to day.
My ass, by the way. Like,
he's hurting.
That you can't have a meniscus tear and be day to day, man.
I was gonna say if you're Philly, I mean, and obviously we don't know, the situation when it comes to Embiid's health as well as the team does. But when you hear small meniscus tear, and he's been sitting and working on this for what, like 4 days now or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you even play him in game 1?
Dude, I wouldn't, and I don't know how negligent it would be if they did. Like, you gotta really weigh the risks of this.
It's all going to come down to like.
I found it interesting too, by the way, the way that they closed against the Wizards, where Ben Simmons was essentially the center.
Yeah, I mean, it was like Magic Johnson 1980 finals, But I mean, if they don't have Embiid, I mean, I don't think they're going to win it all. But I mean, I think that leaves the door wide open for the Hawks to beat them, because you're talking about, without Embiid, it's just a game of, it's going to be kind of a track meet, I think, of going up and down and up and down and up and down, and who can actually get some stops.
And that's a pace that favors the hell out of the Hawks. But I will say this, the Sixers do have shooters. We know that Seth Curry can light it up. What did he have, 30 in the closing game? You have Tobias Harris, who is hell-bent on showing that he's absolutely going to be a piece on a championship team.
We have the big 3, not the big 2.5.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, Danny Green's been there, done that for like every possible team. So like, by no means should we, count out the Sixers.
As a Laker fan, can I apologize to Danny Green for all of the hits that guy's taken from
just recruiting him to come back?
Laker Nation. Well, no, it's not that. It's just like he got unfairly picked on by so many different Laker fans, last season and this season. People that were flat out, shall we say, buttholes about the whole situation and Danny Green throughout the season. And all he's done is, once again, like, hit threes at a good clip, plays defense, and is a great veteran presence on the court.
Yeah, no question. And he's been huge. He's been huge for them.
I miss you, Danny. I miss you. I miss you so much.
We brought this up early in the season too. This is why you have Dwight Howard. So now you don't have to worry quite as much as you would have in previous season, so you're still okay. You're still have your home court and stuff like that. You're facing an inexperienced team, but I'm with you though, because when you're missing someone of that caliber, and you've played it without him, so that actually probably helps that Embiid was out for that stretch during the regular season.
But I mean, they can't match up against him. You just can't. No. And now it becomes a little bit more of a coin flip on who's going to win. I mean, Philly still has the pieces where they can do it, but when you're missing your best player, who you would think would not just play good in a series like this, like he would dominate in this series, like just flat out crush.
I think Capella would have given him a fight if they're going to play him, but we'll see.
But I think that Embiid's probably going to do that against everybody
Right.
I don't know if
And no one
anybody
could match up with the stature and the brawn that he brings. And
Right.
also at the same time, like what I wrote on basketballnews.com, just the nimble nature about the way that he drives and gets downhill, and does pull up jumpers. There's no one like a Joel Embiid in the league.
And that's the whole thing now.
Like, it's crazy.
We're going to have to see when it comes to Embiid and his health. To me, it's going to be like, how big can he change direction?
He might just be relegated to the post. He might be just spotting up, like, because you're not going to want to take that chance to move and make those quick cuts and those Euro steps. Like,
can he make the cuts on defense, as well, rather than just being the guy that's going to be a huge guy that can still, deter shots, but not be the presence they typically can. And what's he going to be like getting up and down the court? Like, what's his gait going to be? And like all these different, I mean, there's different things like that. That I really wonder if they say, you know what, game one, we're going to see how it goes. We're not going to do this. We're not going to play him. We're not going to play him.
I was going to say, don't play him. Yeah, don't
play him. And then, then if you win that game, if you're the Sixers, then you could probably say, let's buy him some more time and now play him in game two, depending on his health status and what they see and what the doctors say and all that. But it puts more emphasis on them, obviously, to play in the game too. Like if they're on the fence and they're down 0-1, maybe you put them in there, but if you're up, 1-0 and, you're on the fence, then you could buy them a little bit more time and say, hey, we're going to bench them. We'll play it safe.
Yes, agreed. And you just don't want to mess with that. Like we saw what just happened with AD, for goodness sake. Like you don't want that happening to somebody who probably would have been in the MVP running.
Because the thing is, like, you've got a meniscus tear. Who's not to say that you don't overcompensate? Next thing you know, okay, now
and his injury history too.
Yeah,
like that's the other thing.
Okay, so now I've got a groin injury, or now I put too much weight on my other leg and I screwed up my knee or my ankle or something in my other leg. So I mean that's the way that these things go. Is like one injury and you overcompensate. Next thing you know, you've hurt something else. So, and this isn't a team that is happy to get to the second round. This is a team that has championship aspirations, and rightfully so. So, if Embiid cannot play in this series, I think it really opens it up. And I'm not going to discount the Hawks. If Embiid is close to being 100% and can play, I think the Sixers have a big advantage. But if they don't, I'm not going to discount the Hawks with the swagger that they're playing with right now.
No, you can't. You can't. And quick plug too, by the way, when we talk about clearing of injuries and team doctors and whatnot, Ari Thomas did an excellent article today based on the decision to play Anthony Davis last night for the Lakers and how it was irresponsible. And he actually took, firsthand perspectives of when he was with the Washington Wizards and seeing teammates of his get cleared for games and being told to tough things out. And it led to later damage, whether it was in that season or down the line, and, provided plenty of examples. So if y'all want to check that out, it's really good in-depth perspective, and it's very relevant to what happened with Anthony Davis last night. And then possibly with what happens with Embiid here, depending on whether they play him or not. Yeah.
When it comes to the Lakers, reportedly there were teammates of Anthony Davis's that were saying, do not play. Yep. I'm seeing the way that you're moving. Don't play. The doctors, I think, basically just said, well, you're not moving well, but we do not believe that you could hurt yourself even worse. Like you're not opening yourself up to like some horrific injury by playing. And AD just felt like I need to at least try. But look, he went out 5 minutes. It was already done.
You credit the guy. You credit the guy.
I credit him.
It's just I
don't think anybody tried to goad him or guilt him into it. But at the same time, I credit him. But he should not have been on the court. I mean,
you could see it within the first.
I really wish, I'm not going to put all the blame on them, because I think AD was going to really kind of, force his way into this. I really wish the doctors had just made the decision for him and say, you know what, I don't care if you can hurt yourself further or not. No. We're gonna make the decision for you because we know you as the athlete.
It's their job.
Go out there and play, and we're just gonna shut that down right now. And we'll take the heat.
It's their job. It's almost like look what happened with Donovan Mitchell in game 1 of the Jazz. And he was supposed to go, and then they made the last minute decision to say, hey, you know what? Let's give it another game.
Yep.
And it frustrates the hell out of a player. You understand that, but it is the doctor's job to let you know when you cannot and can go. And that's the conflict of interest that Atan was talking about in this article about doctors that work for teams and then doctors that have a second opinion that are not connected to those teams and the priorities that come with it. So again, that's a good article. So you guys definitely got to go check that out.
Before we get to the Celtics,
I was going to say, you're spoiling it.
Before you get to the Celtics though.
Yeah.
Let's put ourselves on the line here a little bit and let's give some predictions.
Let's
do it, man. Let's start with the East, then we'll go to the West. Okay.
Okay.
Sixers, Hawks.
I got to still stick with the Sixers. And I'll say in 7. I don't know Joel Embiid's health, but even without Joel Embiid, I think that the Sixers have a little too much just defensively and again, experience on that end. I think that Matisse Thybulle is going to be put on Trae Young quite a bit. And Thybulle is one of the best defenders in the league, not only from an on-ball standpoint, but from a flying around. And I believe Zach Lowe called it phasing from one side of a court to the other. So his activity, I think, is going to really put some pressure on them. So I'll go with Sixers in 7.
I'll say Sixers in 6. If Embiid is close to being healthy for at least 3 of the games, I think they'll win it in 5.
The only reason I say 7 is because Embiid's not going to be healthy.
Right.
That's what I think.
All right. Bucks, Nets. I'll go first. I'll tell you what. I really want to pick the Bucks. I am going to pick the Nets.
Okay.
I really want to pick the Bucks, and I really love what they're doing, but there's just something in me that just says those 3 guys together, and you can see them picking up steam as it goes on. Now, mind you, I think they had a little bit of a letdown in the 1 loss to the Celtics, and then we had, Stompgate go on there. But those 3 guys are just so good, and they fit together. I didn't necessarily think they would, but they do. I hope it goes 7. I will say it goes 7. But I'm going to take the Nets.
Okay. I'll go head to head with you here.
Pick with your heart. I mean, just
no. It's not because I want to go. I really think that Giannis is done hearing the crap. I think he's done with it, and I think Drew. And I told you this before the playoffs started. That I had Sixers and Clippers in my finals. Okay. But I told you my third team was the Bucks. That was my dark horse because we talked about how much they've experimented this year. And, the regular season wins weren't the focus. It was about different schemes and defensive coverages and all that. I think that comes into play now. And I think that, having Drew around takes a lot of pressure off of Giannis, and it takes a lot of pressure off of Chris. So now that they can operate as their own well-oiled machine, and have themselves surrounded by shooters like Bryn Forbes, PJ Tucker in the corner whenever he does fire him up, Bobby Portis, all these guys, Pat Connaughton. I think they have enough offensively to keep up with the Nets. I think, especially because we saw that the Nets were giving up points galore to the Celtics, which probably doesn't bode well for him.
Well, I wonder how much of that did the Nets take them seriously? Were they letting their foot off the gas a little bit, or is that who they are?
Yeah, exactly. You don't know. So I will go with the evidence in front of my eyes, and I will look at how the Bucks dissected the Miami Heat, who are supposed to be known for defense, and didn't quite turn out that way. So I'll go with Bucks. I'll go with Bucks in 7.
All right. So then on the other side, we've got, well, first of all, let's talk about tonight.
We have one that's not determined yet.
Clippers, Mavericks. I mean, I think the Mavericks are going to win this series. I think they're
Okay.
going to win. I think they're going to
Think they
close
wrap
it
it
out
up
in Game
tonight?
6. I
Think they wrap it
do.
up tonight? Okay.
Now you have to stay with the Clippers because you picked the Clippers to come out of the West.
Yes,
Oh,
I
wait,
do.
well, I'll let you change your mind. You want to change your mind?
I
Change your
don't.
mind.
I actually don't.
Okay.
I actually don't. I think they can win the next two. I know it's a monumental task, but again, I'm gonna go ahead and back my guy Ty.
Okay.
Um,
Do you still like the Clippers to beat the Jazz in the second round?
that one's tough. That one's really tough, and maybe I'm gonna broach that subject when we get to it. That's tough. That's real tough. I mean, I had Clippers and Sixers in my final, so I guess I got to stick to my guns, right? So,
Well,
but if the Mavs win the series, then I will have the Jazz winning.
I have the Mavericks win the series, and I'm going to go with the Jazz as well.
Okay.
I just like that backcourt too much.
Okay.
From
a rim protection standpoint, the Mavs have a very, very tough problem there, especially with how much pressure, Donovan puts on the rim and Mike puts on the rim, Jordan Clarkson, all of them get to the rim. And what have they not been able to do against the Clippers is stop them from getting to the free throw line and getting inside.
Right. I just don't think the Mavericks are going to be able to generate enough stops in a series like that. As much as Luka can control the game, I just don't think they can get enough stops.
Yeah.
So, and then the other one is the Nuggets against the Suns.
I got to go with the Nuggets. I got to go. You've thrown the kitchen sink at them as far as problems go, and as far as setbacks go, and they just don't give in. They don't give in.
Okay.
I know that the Suns are on this mission and they're hungry just like they were. They ate no bubble and showing what they were made of. But completely, I'm telling you right now, I'm blindsided by the Nuggets. Like I knew that they would put up a fight in the series against the Blazers, but again, I had the Blazers winning. I didn't think that they had enough. But from watching this team, I'm enthralled by the way that they can take a punch and get right back up. And that's something that you need. And that is a championship-esque quality for them to have. And I know that, Chris Paul, Jay Crowder, they're going to want their way. And the young guys are hungry, but there's just something about this Nuggets team. And, they have the MVP on the team and, he's MVP for a reason. He's MVP for a reason. So, Nuggets in 6.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Nuggets in 6. I think even if Phoenix starts playing Sarge more, I think they're a big short against the Nuggets. And I think Jokic, just like he did in the first round, he's going to be too much for them. I love watching Devin Booker play, especially, to see him grow into what he is right now. It's fantastic, but I think the Nuggets just have a little bit too much size and I think are better at hitting shots than the Lakers are. Mind you, I think there's teams at the Y that are better than hitting shots better than the Lakers right now. But
he's getting all of his parting shots in right now. He's getting all the parting shots.
Hey, you know what? I'm a Laker fan. I like those guys. It's just disappointing when you're watching the guys,
It's hilarious.
Just, you know that meme of the guy just bricking shots, that's kind of what it was. And it's funny because they've had stretches of the seasons where the Lakers, were hitting plenty, but it's been their problem all season long. And I just think the Nuggets with their shooting is good enough. I mean, especially if Will Barton can come back. I mean, that's going to be a big thing because, you look at their backcourt and you're saying, what a problem this is going to be. And it's been a problem. Guys have kind of band-aided it together and hit some big shots and whatnot, but they need more of that backcourt if they're going to get further in the playoffs. And this is going to be a test for them, but I think they've got enough. And I like the Nuggets in 6.
Couple of amazing young talents being featured in this too. I'm very excited for this series. I think it has a very, very good, very competitive feel to it. And, I made this joke on Twitter last night because, the perspective of LeBron and the Lakers being out of the playoffs. And I'm just like, what really makes the playoffs worthwhile? The cities that the teams are in, not the amazing players or the competitiveness of the games and the series. The city, that's what's really most important. So I absolutely enjoy the tears from the talking heads and stuff that complaining that they got to go to Denver or to go to the Phoenix, or I'm like, okay, go ahead. Yeah, continue to complain, and I'll just continue enjoying watching the next breed and the next generation take over and create new stars. That's what I look forward to.
Or even me as a Laker fan, but I'm a basketball fan, I'm an NBA fan, and then see people going, well, who cares about watching now? And the NBA's got to be disappointed. Knicks are out, Lakers are out.
Okay,
blah,
go
blah,
ahead,
blah.
go ahead and miss Donovan Mitchell, miss Devin Booker, miss all of these amazing talents, miss Giannis, miss Brooklyn Big Three. Go ahead, leave.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much great young talent again. Plus, not even young talent. You look at the Nets and their big three alone. I mean, that's star power right there.
Miss the MVP.
I'm sorry they're not. They're across the river and they're downtown in New York. Rather than uptown. But it's just like there's so much good young talent. That they're playing in the playoffs to this point. I mean, every year somebody breaks out that really kind of like look out for this guy. Last year was Luka. This year it's Devin Booker so far, and you can see this with these guys, man. It's just so much fun to watch, and there's so much talent in the NBA.
Trae Young going out and just shutting up the entire Madison Square Garden.
He bowed in front of Madison Square Garden as a parting shot.
It's amazing. He told him to shut the F up, and then he bowed when he took him out of the playoffs.
Yes. So I mean, that's the NBA. I mean,
they're in good hands. They're in good hands, and this is what I don't get.
It almost feels like, to some extent, like there is a changing at the guard when it comes to we're stepping to the younger class. I mean, now mind you, it's because the biggest star in the league in LeBron James is one step older, and can he actually turn it on again? And what are we going to see for him going forward? And Anthony Davis he's not really part of the young class, not necessarily part of the older class, whatever.
Right in that middle, right in that happy middle.
He's right in that middle. But I mean, look at so many other younger guys that are like, now it's my time to shine. I'm going to step up, and that's led by Booker, that's led by Luka, that's led by Embiid, if he can be healthy. Trae Young is out there. So I mean,
Jokic.
Hey, if you don't want to watch, fine. Just don't cry and poo-poo it all over, social media or whatever. Let us enjoy the games.
People hate change.
Speaking of change, there's a lot of change going on in Boston, Spencer.
Yes, I was waiting on it. Yeah, really wasn't quite expecting to wake up to. I didn't get blindsided by the fact that Danny Ainge had parted ways with the Celtics and retired. I did not expect to see that Brad Stevens would no longer be the head coach, but the general manager of the team. That was interesting. And what's his actual title of the position? Is it president of basketball operations?
Yeah, he's president of basketball operations. So I mean, I'm with you there, because we had talked about this too, and this has kind of been the scuttlebutt around. Like there was going to be some major changes in the Boston front office, but I always thought, and I believed, like Brad Stevens is going to be around as the head coach. He just signed an extension. I thought, and I think I mentioned it here, even like Danny would be moved to like president of basketball operations. Somebody else would come in as that VP GM role. And then maybe Danny would kind of,
Mike Zarin could have been in the,
Mike Zarin could have been that guy, but you would have seen Danny maybe hold that position for a couple of years, kind of take a little bit more of a backseat, but kind of be like a godfather kind of a guy there a little bit more. But instead he's out, he's totally out. And I mean, Brad Stevens not being the head coach is a shocker. And, for the Boston, which is really big on continuity and, kind of having, the structure that they do there, saying we don't need to cast a net. We don't need to go looking for anybody else when it comes to, this position. We're going to give it to Brad. We believe in him. And to find out the stories afterwards too, that Brad Stevens was burned out since the bubble, last year to this year, of being a coach and the grind of being on the road that comes with it. I mean, being the GM, VP of basketball operations, that's a different kind of grind. Like you don't get any days off in that as well, but you don't necessarily have to be on the road as much.
No.
And we'll see how Brad does. And now the Celtics are looking for, a new head coach, and they're looking for probably a new vision on how they're going to shape this team, because we expect some pretty big changes coming to the roster in Boston.
Yeah, and our Ethan Fuller did an amazing breakdown of the pros and cons of this move. Janelle Moore really dug into the shortcomings of Danny Ainge, even though James Posey, we had so much Celtics stuff on the site 2 days ago, guys. James
It was
Posey,
disgusting, man.
James Posey went in and talked about how good of a job he think that Danny Ainge did, and what he meant to Posey's career, and just the man that Danny Ainge is. So make sure to check that out. But
I mean, Danny had that position for 18 years.
Oh yeah, 2003.
And when you look at his track record when it came to the draft, he was really good at drafting top draft picks. The problem was probably when it came to the lower picks and then deciding on when he wanted to pull a trigger on the trade. And I think some people were frustrated he didn't do that more often. I think there's both sides of it there. But when it came to his track record of what he did with top draft picks, he did a great job with that.
Ironically, he was the last person to make the leap from head coach to GM, by the way. There were some years in between, though. So this is an interesting thing here for Brad Stevens to be making that leap. But as Ethan detailed, the pros of this are no one knows these players better than Brad Stevens. He legitimately coached them. So he knows what their strengths are. He knows what their weaknesses are, what the team needs. We've already seen, rumors out there that Kemba Walker could be on the move. So he
that's
knows
going to be
that.
very difficult, but yeah, I mean, he's owed what, $73 million over 2 years, and he's got bum knees.
Hey, could the Mavs be interested? Like with Kristaps Porzingis? Like could
right. There's different ways to make it work.
Could the Cavs be interested with a Kevin Love? There are bad contracts out there, so I'm sure that there's some that could make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, I mean, he's a smaller point guard, but I mean, he still has his moments. It's just whether or not he can stay healthy.
Yes, absolutely. And then you think about the cons is, he's not had experience in this position before. I'm sure that he had some input on what some of the roster decisions were, but just having zero experience as a NBA general manager, that's going to be an interesting change for somebody like that.
Well, when it comes to, what they're going to do with this roster, I mean, can they actually trade Kemba Walker? That's going to be a part of it. I can't imagine them trading Tatum or Brown, either one. And Brown would probably be the one that would get more conversation. I can't imagine either of them. And I think the Celtics fans would revolt if either of them got traded, but there's so many other things that they could do. I think Marcus Smart is probably going to be moved. That's probably going to be the most obvious one.
Every team can use a Marcus Smart, by the way. So that's not a hard one.
He's a movable contract. And then, they've got this huge trade exception, of $28 million that they could use in the offseason. So he's got some tools. It's not going to be easy because they obviously, have some, things that they need, for this roster. It's a very thin roster. And it's a roster that didn't play a style of ball that Brad Stevens liked. I mean, it was not predicated on ball movement. There was too much my turn, your turn, my turn, things like that. You look at the talent that they lost over the last couple of years, when it came to Horford, which maybe wasn't as big of a deal considering, the injuries and drop off he's had, but losing Gordon Hayward, and not getting anything back in return, even with Kyrie Irving. Say what you will about his stint with Boston. I mean, you lose a talented guy and get nothing back. I mean, that's not Boston's fault. Kyrie wanted to go. It's tough to lose talent, for free, and we'll see what he can do. And, I'm really curious what they're going to do when it comes to the next head coach, because I know that they're interviewing several of their assistants. But I really believe that if Boston wants to reshape what they're doing, they can interview those guys all they want, but they need to go elsewhere. They need to go outside the family, so to speak, and find somebody else. And there's a lot of good, attractive candidates, I think, that are hungry candidates that are assistant coaches that they can look at.
Yep. And the Athletic reported a couple of them. I saw that there were a couple in there that kind of caught you off guard a little bit. Like Carol Lawson was one of them. I saw that Becky Hammond was one of them, even though I think Becky is going to definitely be the successor to Greg Popovich. But there were a number of candidates in there that were like, oh, okay, there's a little bit different flavor.
Here's a couple other ones too. Like I know people who talk about Jason Kidd. I don't even know if he's going to get interviewed.
I don't know how Jason Kidd is still getting consideration to be a head coach.
Because he's a name. He's a name, and that's it. I mean, maybe Portland for him, but outside of that, I don't see him going to Boston. I mean, some of the other ones, and quite honestly, the first name that I thought of when you talked about this opening was Chauncey Billups, because I think he would be a great fit. Plus I think it can help that team a lot if they had somebody that was more recently a head coach and also somebody that's an African-American for the city of Boston. So I think, what a reunion that would be. Chauncey Billups drafted by the Celtics, only plays 50 games and now he's back, to man the sidelines. You have Darvin Ham with the Milwaukee Bucks, I think would be a choice. And another name that's kind of this assistant, maybe it's people around the league know he is, but maybe not, fans a lot, but Ime Udoka, who's over at Brooklyn, he's another guy that I guess a lot of people around the league think is pop disciple that could, has earned a shot somewhere that he should probably at least get an interview, if not a serious consideration. So to me, Billups is the one that really stands out.
Okay.
But we'll see what they do. I mean, Carol Loss would be an outside the box choice, and that would be fascinating as well.
Yes.
But I think they've got some really interesting choices. Like, I understand you've got assistants that maybe you do like, but and the Boston way is kind of like keep it within the family, or kind of keep it within what we already have. But I really think they're in a position that they need a fresh perspective. They need to go outside of what they have right now and look elsewhere.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's going to come down between them and the Blazers to try and get some of these candidates, because I think I've seen Billups also linked to the Blazers. So like, you've got some interesting scuttlebutt here coming on in the offseason.
Do you think Pop comes back?
There's a lot of speculation out there that he isn't. Who was it? Was it Robert Ory that said that he didn't? This isn't sourced or anything, but he just has a feeling that was it for Pop. He's coaching USA, right?
Yeah, he is.
I feel like he's coming back. I feel like
he probably is too. But I mean, I can see it either way.
He's not gonna make a big deal when he goes. He's gonna be like, all right, see you guys.
He's gonna be like, I'm focusing on my line of wines and I'm gonna chill every night. It's just like
trying to get to that Don Nelson level of hair and
and I mean, he's Mad Max Fury Road right now. But I don't know if we're going to when that day comes that Pop decides to no longer coach. I don't know if we're going to really see him on the set of TNT or ESPN. No. I just think he's going to be kind of a quiet guy that every now and then somebody speaks to for on background for an article or something. But that's about it.
I agree. Well, Brian, I think that we definitely took this the length here. We're about hour and 37 in. Is there anything else that you would like to hit? Because I think that that's a pretty good stopping point for us here.
I think we're already starting to, people are starting to look a little bit ahead to the offseason and moves for some of these teams. But you know what? Pump the brakes on that. We still got plenty of playoff action coming your way. And I think there are going to be some really, really great games and some great matchups coming up here that I'm looking forward to watching.
Yeah, same here, man. Same here. So we're going to wrap it up right there. We'd like to tell you that we are a part of the basketballnews.com podcast network. We've got 10 other great podcasts for you to listen to, not limited to the Rex Chapman Show with Rex Chapman and Josh Hopkins. We have Neat and Unfiltered with Kenyon Martin and Jadakiss. Kenyon, by the way, wrote an excellent piece. Whether you disagree or agree, came up with a solution for these wild fans in the arenas right now that are doing way too much, way too much. He proposed a solution. So make sure to go check that out. That's on basketballnews.com. The postcast with James Posey, Dishes and Dimes with the ladies. Etan Thomas has the rematch, the dunker spot with Nikias Duncan and Steve Jones Jr., one of the fastest growing podcasts, not just sports podcasts, not just basketball podcasts, but podcasts in the nation. So got to check that out.
They have a brand new podcast that came out just last night as well.
There you go. It's probably live on basketballnews.com right now. The Alex Kennedy podcast with Alex Kennedy, the Sheridan Show with Chris Sheridan, the follow through with Clips and Drew, and of course, NBA Top Shot Weekly with Oliver Maroney and Alex Kennedy. So make sure to go follow those. Some of those happen live, like this one right now. And then others, obviously, you can just go like, subscribe, review, rate. You can see multiple of our player podcasts on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/basketball news. So that is the plug of the day. I would also like to tell you to read all of our articles and player features and all that good stuff on basketballnews.com because we're churning it out. And we're your home for playoff coverage, but we will also be your home for NBA offseason coverage, including the draft. Because right now, as we speak, we have the inaugural Tampa Bay Pro Combine happening right now, and it's going excellent. If you missed it yesterday, there was a dunk contest, and boy, oh boy, Jim Agatwich, he just tore the roof off the place. So you want to make sure to go check that highlight out. Jumped over Troy Baxter. It was this whole ordeal, but a really great event going on down there right now. So make sure to check that out. We're going to have great reports on that and all your NBA draft prospects, top to bottom, free agency, draft coverage, all of it. We're going to have you covered right away. So again, make sure to check out basketballnews.com. And until next time, for Brian Fritz, I'm Spencer Davies. You can find us on Twitter @SpinDavies and him @Brian Fritz. We will see you for our next episode.